Welcome to the Anchored Podcast. Have you ever wondered how to stay grounded in your faith amid heartache, confusion, and a seemingly mass exodus of people leaving the faith? My name is Roseanne Dawes.
And I'm Stephanie Frankham. And we've discovered that being anchored in Jesus Christ is the key to navigating these rough waters. Join us as we explore how their faith and covenants have helped each of our guests navigate the storms of life.
Hello, and welcome to the Anchored Podcast.
We are so excited today to introduce you to Jared Davies.
And we've met Jared Davies on YouTube, and some of you probably have with Christian Homestead. And he just has been mentioning things on his YouTube channel about, reaching out to him and collaborating. And that's what we did. And so we got to know him a little bit that way. And we asked if he would want to share his story on our podcast, and he's willing. And we're so grateful for that. So, Jared, thank you for coming on today. And will you just give us a little tidbit, give us an introduction of just who you are?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Jared Davies. I have a YouTube channel called Christian Homestead. I started it back in 2021. At that time, there were a lot less LDS content creators than there are now. And I was very interested in the second coming at that time. And there were very few channels, but there were some, really good presentations. But it just wanted more, and I was developing my own ideas. And just one day we were out running errands, and I was feeling a prompting to share some of my thoughts on YouTube, and I just did it on my phone. I didn't even record myself. We just got home, and I went out to the chicken coop, and just started recording my chickens in the chicken coop, and then it just became a thing. I just felt a desire and the prompting to continue, and now it's become a little bit more, I wouldn't say professional, but a little bit more organized. And we've moved away from filming the homestead. I don't even have a homestead anymore. Now we just recently moved to Independence, Missouri. And all my time basically goes to this channel. And I'm just constantly looking for not just things having to do with the second coming, but just staying on top of church news, looking into the doctrines of the church. And I have these spreadsheets where I try and collect and organize all the information that I find to try and keep things straight. And it's just an ongoing project. So that's me, and that's what I'm doing.
That is wonderful. The thing you didn't tell us, though, your family. So you have children, you're married, you're not married?
Yep. Yeah, my wife, Jenica, then we have two teenage daughters, and then we have a son that just recently turned 8 years old. So he'll be getting baptized pretty soon. And it's just the five of us.
Perfect. Perfect. Well, if you want to go ahead and just jump right in, we would love to hear your story.
All right. So I've been a member of the church my entire life. I guess it starts with my mom and my dad, of course. He grew up a member of the church. He went on a mission to Portugal, and my mom was originally born in Luanda in Africa. She was, back in those days, Portugal still had Luanda as a colony. They had a revolution. She and her family fled back to Portugal, and that's where she came across the missionaries, my dad. So they got married. She came to the United States, became an American citizen, and they had me and my brother. And so I grew up in the church, and everything was great. I felt like I always had a pretty strong testimony, even at an early age. When I got to, I think it was my junior year of high school, it may have been like the summer between my sophomore year and junior year. That's when I came across some like anti-church material, and being young and not having as much knowledge as I do now or as much life experience, I kind of fell for some of those arguments, and I didn't know how to answer some of those questions about the Book of Mormon and so forth. And so I was really confused, didn't really know what to do. I don't think I really asked my parents or anybody else about it. I just kind of leaned to my own wisdom, and I was like, yeah, you know what? I think that this is actually probably false. Like it's a fabrication. And so it was a really kind of a dark time. I didn't do anything too bad, but I did gain some insights uh, from that experience. Being a young teenage boy, there were certain things that drove me to want to step away from the church. And I think that kind of went hand in hand with questioning the church, because it's like, well, if the church isn't true, then it's okay to do this. I don't have to feel guilty about that. I can indulge in this. And so those things went hand in hand. They were separate. I did have genuine questions and doubts about the church, Book of Mormon, Joseph Smith, all the things that people typically question. But right next to it were those things that I wanted to do that up until that point I couldn't do. And so for a little while, it felt a little bit liberating, because it's like, oh, now I don't need to worry about anything. I still did question, if there was God. I was pretty sure that there was a God, but what religion um, is the true religion, and how do I find it? And just from my upbringing in the church, I knew what to do. I prayed, I studied, I prayed, I looked into other churches and religions, and I just kept getting the nagging feeling that I already had it before stepping away, despite having these questions about the church. And so I remember I had started working at UPS as like in their hub in West Valley, Utah, and I worked as a loader, loading the semi trailers. And I had this supervisor that was a member of the church, and somehow we started talking about church, and I expressed my concerns and doubts, and about like specifically the conversation that we were having had to do with the Book of Mormon. And it's like, oh, is that it? I was like, well, yeah, it's kind of a big thing, isn't it? But it was like the spirit that touched me in that moment, in the way that he said it. It's not, he wasn't being like dismissive of my concerns, but he's like, that's not a big deal. And so that's like kind of like when I really turned around and started like really praying a lot more. And then I did continue going to church. And I went to, geez, I wish I remember what year this was. I think it was probably by the point that the conference center was being used for general conference, but I didn't get a ticket for the conference center. I was in the tabernacle in the overflow. But it was during that conference where, I think it was the priesthood session. They were talking about Joseph Smith, and um, I don't have exactly what they said, but exactly what they did say was exactly what I needed to hear. It like answered my questions and soothed my concerns. I also, in addition to that, this is kind of a weird thing, but I kept seeing the number 20, just like all the time 20. Usually, like on a clock, it'd be like 5:20, 6:20, whatever, like over and over and over and over again. And I never experienced anything like that in my life. And I was thinking, there's like something to this. And so there was one day, again, I don't know if this was before conference or after. It was probably around that same time, pretty close to that same time. But whatever the case, I went to church with my parents. I was in sacrament meeting, and I decided to do the thing where you open up the scriptures to your random place. And it was in Proverbs. I should know the chapter, but I wasn't expecting to tell this story, so I don't remember off the top of my head. But it was somewhere in Proverbs, and I started reading in the 20th verse because I had 20 on the mind. So I was like, oh, start at verse 20. And the way that it was worded is almost as though the Lord was talking to me specifically about the Book of Mormon. And it was worded in such a way like, haven't I written good things to you? And, there's more to it that fit very, very well. So those were kind of like the two big things: my experience in the tabernacle, um, coming across that scripture. And then there was also that at that same time there was an ensign that had come out, and like it was like mostly focused on Joseph Smith. Like the cover of it, it was like a depiction of the first vision. And so those kind of like three things all work together in harmony to like get me back on track. And then I started taking my gospel study a lot more seriously, and praying, doing a lot of praying, and then receiving answers to prayers. And so in my life, that was kind of like the only really big like hiccup that I had as far as my testimony went. And I feel like at that point, that's when I really truly gained my own testimony. Again, I feel like I had one before then. Some of it from my parents, but some of it my own, like even at an early age. But by that point, once I had this experience, then I like really, really knew for myself that it was true.
How long was that span of time?
It was pretty short. It's probably just like a year, maybe a year and a half, something like that.
So you were still in your parents' home and
Yep.
then gained that. That's amazing.
Yeah. There was a point where I told my mom that I wasn't going to go on a mission. I was like, I'm not going to do it. And it's just so crazy because I felt so certain about it. And then it wasn't too long after that that I did go on a mission. And I look back and just thought about how foolish that was. Again, not that I was like foolish for questioning things, like we should always question things, but we should also do our due diligence to find the answer. And the best way to find the answer to something, especially when it's religious in nature, is you go directly to the source. Because the external world, like outside of ourselves, is so prone to deception and manipulation. Um, and on top of that, the world is very complex. It can be very confusing and hard to get to the right answer, even if you're genuinely searching. But you go directly to the source, and he can guide you to the answer or provide it to you in different ways. And so I realized that I went on my mission, which was an incredible experience. I went to the Spain Barcelona mission, and that was a very spiritual experience. My testimony grew through that, helping others find and then come into the church, um, and seeing miracles and stuff. But then after that, I came home, and like I was ready to get married. I did not want to go like even one more minute without my family, my future eternal family, my wife and children. Like I didn't want to waste time being single. I did plan to go to school full time, but I wanted to be married. I want to be with my eternal companion. So um, almost immediately after I got home, um, me and Jenica got married. We had already known each other for years because before I went on my mission, I went to a singles ward in Murray, and we were in the same group of friends, and we had become really good friends, but like genuine friends. It wasn't like the dating facade. It was I really knew who the real Jenica was. She knew who the real me was, and so thankfully she didn't get married while I was gone. Uh, that was kind of a miracle because a lot of guys liked her. I'm not just saying that, there were a lot of guys that liked her, so it was kind of a miracle that she was still available. And then we got married, and we started off our marriage, both of us working full time. She worked at a bank. I worked at this weird place. I don't need to explain it, but um, I was like, okay, well, now it's time. I've gone on my mission. I finished high school, went on my mission. Now it's time to go to school. And so I started going to school for accounting. Um, and we also were starting to look at like looking to buy a house in Layton. There was it was like an older house, but it was like nice and we could afford it. And we started going through the process of buying that house. But we were having like doubts and promptings. Specifically, one time around this time, we had just walked outside of our church on a Sunday. Church was over. I was walking out into the parking lot, and I just had a very strong feeling uh, to try and have children. And I was like, no, that is dumb. I should not do that until I'm done getting my degree. And maybe for some people that's the right answer, but um, we initially had that impression. Then we tried to get the house, and then we started having more impressions to start a family. And we were already we had already put in an offer, and somehow the sellers allowed us to like exit out of the contract. That again was kind of a miracle. And we stepped away from it, didn't buy the house. and we decided to start our family. And there were a whole bunch of like signs that went along with that. But I was like, well, okay, it's fine. It's fine. We'll have our children. I'll still finish my get at least, bachelor's degree in accounting, ideally like a master's degree. Um, but once we had our child, uh, we decided that we didn't want Jenica to work, which was fine. We did the math. It's like, okay, we'll be able to afford this. It's going to be a little iffy, but I'll go to school full time and I'll work full time. No, that's not how it worked out. That was not practical. And so we prayed that Jenica would be able to stay home because that's one of our values. I grew up with a mother that stayed at home, and it really benefited me psychologically, spiritually, emotionally. It gave me just a secure foundation. My mom taught me a lot, and so I wanted that for my family. And we prayed that that would be possible. And so um, we were coming up on another semester after having had our first child, and it was just the first couple days, and I was like overwhelmed with stress, and it just didn't feel right. And so I just dropped out. I dropped out of that semester. And I was like, okay, we need to like rethink this. We had a friend that had just become an aircraft dispatcher, which is not the same thing as air traffic control. An aircraft dispatcher, you work for a private company like Delta, and you work in their command center, and you track the flights. It's like being the pilot on the ground. It's not, but it's not air traffic control. So whatever. So I was like, okay, well, this is it. Like he just got this job, and Salt Lake Community College just got this new aircraft dispatch program. I was like, okay, maybe it's meant to be. So I went through that program. That took like a year and a half. I got certified, and then I was like, okay, well, this is it. Like I just have to work for a little while as an aircraft dispatcher, and after X number of years, I should be making good money, and everything will be okay. So we moved down to Surprise, Arizona, which is a suburb of Phoenix, to live with her parents, or her grandparents. They wanted us to live with them so we could save money to like, start our new life, buy a home, or save money to potentially move across the country because there's like only one place in Utah where you can be an aircraft dispatcher, and that's with SkyWest Airlines, unless something's changed since that time. And so, you know, I applied for jobs, applied for jobs, and just nothing was working out. I got a couple offers at these like really small airlines, one of them in New England, another one out of Wyoming, and we didn't want to take those offers. They were a little bit iffy, but we were also kind of overstaying our welcome. And during my job search, um, I'd come across a national, like Army National Guard posting for like a similar military job, like the equivalent. And that kind of stuck with me. And then as time was running out, I was like, oh my gosh, is this the direction that we're taking? I cannot possibly join the military. I've already like, we didn't do accounting. Now we switched to this like completely different career, and now the military, but everything felt right. Like again, there's like signs, dreams, discussions that you have with your spouse, discussions that you have with other people, where things all taken together feel right. And so it was kind of scary. This was very scary because I was thinking, did I screw my life up? Did I screw my life up? No, I'm pretty sure this is what the Lord wants me to do. He wants it so that Jenica will stay home. And things are not really working out right now. And I'm feeling led toward the military. So it's like there's like these two views. Did I fail, or is the Lord guiding me this way? Well, there's only way to find out. You follow the promptings and you test it out. And that's what we did. First, I tried with the Air Force, but I was just 1 year too old at that point to join the Air Force active duty. So then I tried the Navy because I was thinking aviation. I want to try to get into aviation. The Navy, it took like at the point that we stopped trying to join the Navy, it was like 6 months because I was waiting on some waivers. So I was like, okay, maybe I'll join the Marine Corps. But I had too many dependents. I couldn't get a waiver for the number of dependents that I had. And so then it was like, okay, Army. I guess it's Army. And so I joined the Army. I wasn't able to get into anything aviation. I was in supply, in logistics. But it's really interesting because I figured that I'd be able to support my family, but I didn't know for sure because it was a step in the dark. But I was able to easily support my family, easily. And this is just as like a junior soldier, not an officer, just started out as a private first class, and then I ranked up to specialist. But while we were in the Army, it was interesting because I had been assigned to Fort Hood, and they renamed it recently to Fort Cavazos. It may go back to Fort Hood now that Trump's, in office. I don't know, but I had the chance to potentially go to a different post in Washington. There was somebody in my AIT class, which is like where you go to learn your job in the Army, and he was from Texas, and I was like, oh, perfect. Like, here, you take my assignment because you can do that. You can switch. You take my assignment, you go to Texas so you can be close to your family, and I'll go to Washington so we can be close to Jenica's family. Well, I don't know. He had a discussion with his dad and his wife, and he didn't want to do that. I was like, are you serious, dude? And so we ended up going to Texas, only later to find out after a couple of years that Jenica has it's her grandma's sister. So I don't know if that's like a great aunt, if that's what it's called. But she had this relative that lived in Houston, which was only a few hours away. And we were able to go visit with her. And it turned out that she had all this like genealogy, like all this family history stuff that had not been entered into Family Search. And so we were able to get that and then enter it into Family Search. It also turned out that her grandfather, I think it was his brother, he had been in the military, and I guess he was buried like right there near Fort Hood, which we didn't know until looking in the family history. So we were clearly guided to the Army for these purposes. I was able to support my family. Jenica could stay at home. There's all the benefits that come with the military, like you get TRICARE, which is their insurance. They cover everything. And we were able to live just like very comfy. We had a lot of good family activities and things that we did in the military. It was a sacrifice on my part. I could have died. I got deployed to Afghanistan. In the deployment right after that I did not go on, my unit went to the same place, and we had a couple of our guys, there were 3 of them, that they died. Look, they deployed to Bagram Air Base, which is a relatively safe place in Afghanistan at that time. But there was a Veterans Day run. Like they do all sorts of like morale type things while you're deployed. And for some people, they like running, so they had like a Veterans Day run. But there was a suicide bomber that was there that knew that this event was taking place and injured a lot of people, killed 3. I was the one that issued them their stuff before they went, like their gas mask and some other things. So it was a risk, and the Army was not easy. It wasn't easy. It was hard. Some of the hardest things that I've experienced in this life was in the Army. But this was the price that I had to pay to walk this path so that Jenica could stay home, so I could support my family, and also just like following the promptings. So it's like so many times we want just comfort. We want to be comfortable. We want to have a pool. We want to have ATVs. We don't want to go through anything hard. And you can pursue that and do well, but the Lord knows the experiences that you need to go through, because these things definitely make you grow. And they could take you on paths that you couldn't see beforehand. And that's what happened with the Army.
I have a
After
question
the Army,
about your, you listening to the promptings and just having confidence in that. And I'm wondering a lot, like, did you always just know what a prompting felt like and you just had confidence in that? Or was that kind of a process for you to learn to trust what that feels like and to move forward with that? Because everything that you're saying is like it's not normal, right? It's not what normal, there's constant detours, it seems. And I just know in my life, there's just so many times where I'm doing things like I taught first grade for 8 years, and there was just something that just said, you need to quit. And it doesn't make any sense. And
Yeah.
since then, it's not been that nice, comfortable ride. And there's lots of ups and downs, but learning to follow those promptings and trusting those promptings has been a process for me. Have you had a similar experience, in learning to trust that or?
Yeah, well, I'd say, like I said, I feel I'm not trying to be grandiose or anything, but I feel like I've always been pretty spiritual. But by practicing following through on promptings and receiving personal revelation, you start to build up like a track record. Like the Lord builds up a track record with you. And in my life, He has a 100% perfect credit score when it comes to Him asking me to do something, prompting me to do something, and then following through. 100%. So I guess like I've always kind of had it, but my testimony has gotten stronger and stronger and stronger over time to where things are becoming like less and less and less scary. Like if I know that it's a true prompting and it so for example, um moving right now from Kansas near Wichita to Independence, Missouri. Like I know there's a lot of people that, when they're getting ready to sell their home, they may move out and rent somewhere for a while they try and sell their home. Uh, but that kind of puts a strain on you financially because it's like, well, what if this house doesn't sell for a few months? What if it doesn't sell for a year? What if it's like 2 years? We have like these two house payments, and then there's all these other things. And but as time has gone on, like after the army and doing these other things, it's just like we've taken such like we've had some like very surprising promptings, and it always works out to where like I don't even care what the next thing is going to be. I think I said this in a recent video. If like all of a sudden I felt prompted to move to Mars, I would do it. I would do it because I know that it's all worked out up until this point. It's just like I feel like it's like almost like beyond faith at this point
That's
because
incredible.
it's always worked out. So
So was
yeah,
any
go ahead.
fear, after you said, okay, this is what I'm going to do. And, I feel comfortable and confident. He's got 100% track record, which I love that. Um, but was it always just smooth sailing once you made that decision, or was there any fear and doubt along the way? You just kind of,
Yeah. Well, yeah, there's constantly uh so I look at it two ways. So you have like the spiritual side. On the spiritual side, I feel like it's always like sure. Like for me, like I always feel sure about the promptings, especially as I collect signs and stuff like that, dreams, whatever. But then you have the natural man side, and you can't really control that because the natural man is reactive. It almost has a life of its own. Um, it's your instincts, and your instincts are designed to keep you safe and to help you survive. So when you're doing things that are spiritual that doesn't make sense to the natural man, then you suddenly have this like civil war inside of you, but you have to make sure that the spiritual side wins because the spiritual side is always right. And sometimes the natural man side is right. The natural man helps us to stay away from snakes and not fall off cliffs, and maybe socially align ourselves in such a way that we'll be safe socially. So it can help us, but there's times where it needs to be overridden. So um, for example, as I was getting ready to get out of the army, because I could not stay. It was too hard on my back. It was hard on the family. I would not go back and change it, but it was time for us to get out of the army for our family. But I didn't know what I was going to do because at this point, I didn't remember anything from aircraft dispatch. I wouldn't be able to get a job. Um, So one day, our neighbor, we lived on post, he was a sergeant. He came over, he's like, hey, come over here. My first sergeant lent me his MIG welder. Let's play around with it. And I didn't really want to because it was nighttime and me and Jenica were watching shows, and in a couple hours we were going to go to bed. But I was like trying to be nice and whatever. So I was like, okay. And so we went out, we were playing around with the MIG welder, not knowing what we were doing. Um, but it just like that started a ball rolling where I was like, should I do welding? Because there's welders that make pretty good money. I don't really view myself, I never have viewed myself as like a blue collar type of person, but I mean, why not? Life has been so unpredictable. Maybe this is what I should do. And so prayed about it, got signs. It felt very uncertain because I was like, this is not me. I'm not a welder. I'm not, I don't really work with my hands. But okay, I felt good about it. I felt a comfort. Like in the background, there was a spiritual peace. And my natural man was like, no, this is not you. But I did it using my post 9/11 GI Bill. I found a trade school in Arizona, and it just worked out to where we were able to to step into that school. Like it was starting up at the same time that I was getting out. And that was a big deal because I was like, well, we have this much money, but what happens as soon as we get out? We have to start paying bills again. We have to start paying rent. Are we going to have enough to last us until I can get a job or whatever? But it wasn't a problem because I was able just to go to welding school and they give you a housing stipend based on your zip code. And so I went through welding school. Uh, and then in the process of doing that, I started up my graphic design business just to the side. It was just bringing in some side income. But then it became my main income because I worked so hard at it that I was like, holy cow, I don't think I have to be a welder. Like I can just do this and I'd be self-employed and I'm making enough to where we can just like survive off of this. And so that's what I did. Like at the very end of welding school, I dropped out because I'm not going to spend one more minute here if this is going to be my career. And it was annoying because the instructors there, they're like, well, you need to finish school. You need to finish school. And the reason why they care about it is because they want to be able to report. They have like this report of like, oh, we've had this many graduates and they've gone on to get jobs and they can advertise that to keep their business going. But I was like, I'm fine. You don't need to worry about me. I'm paying you. Like I'm the customer and I don't need you anymore. So thank you. You still got your money for this amount of time that I went to your school and it served its purpose. But this is my job now. Now I'm a self-employed freelance graphic designer. And so I stepped away from welding and it became apparent why it had to play out like that. It made it so we could have a smooth transition. So it was scary. It was very scary, but I had the peace in the background, in the signs, in the conversations with Jenica. And so we went ahead and did it. Started graphic design. I was like, okay, well, this is what I'm doing. I'm a graphic designer now. This is awesome. I don't report to anybody other than my customers. And on top of that, it's passive income. So you do the work and then you keep getting residual income. Even now, I still get income from all the work that I've done that's still selling. And as I would make my designs, it was kind of tedious because a lot of them were part of like a series. So like you just like tweak one design, you'd have like a template and then tweak it for like a different location. Like I did a bunch of like surfing designs and I like did it for all these different beaches and stuff. And so you go through all the beaches. And so I would just like listen to YouTube. And that's where this all started with me doing YouTube. At that time, there's a lot of stuff going on. Trump had just become president the first time, and we were seeing a lot of unusual things. Shortly after that, President Nelson became president of the church, and things were just getting really interesting and really wild. And then we just like had a prompting once again that we wanted to own land, that we wanted to have a homestead. And that was another thing that was like, I don't think I'm a homesteader. Jenica was more wanting to do that, but promptings and dreams and conversations, and it felt good. But the problem is that there wasn't anywhere west of Kansas that was affordable. There was nowhere. Like, if you wanted to buy a home, like we'd get like a little rinky-dink home, definitely not get any land. And so we started looking at Texas because that's where we lived for like 3 years. And there were places there. We looked at Missouri, we looked at Arkansas, we looked at Oklahoma, looked at Iowa, and we just felt good about Kansas. So we were searching for, we wanted more like 5 to 10 acres. And we had put in offers on all these different homes in Kansas, and none of them got accepted. And then our realtor is like, well, what about this home right here? It's only 2 acres and it's in a small town. I know you want to live in the country, but it's in a small town. And when we got that email, with it being outside of our search parameters and being a smaller home than what we wanted, like much smaller, it just felt good. It felt really good. Something in the background felt really good about it. So I think we had put in a couple offers, but then we came back to this. We're like, let's do this. And it was the right decision. That was actually a really good house for what we needed at that time. It was a good like starter house to like learn how to homestead. It was already set up for cows, and there were a couple places where you could have um, like a chicken run and stuff like that. And it was really good. And the people that we met, it was like it was clear. It became clear over time why that was the right house to go to. And then um, so it's just like that's what I mean. It's just like thing. It's just episode after episode after episode. It always starts with uncertainty. Something's not working out. Oh no, that scares the natural man. Oh no, it's not working out. What am I going to do? But then being prompted and then being led to a new promised land, and then a new promised land, and then a new promised land, and each one getting better than the last, and things becoming grander, to where now I'm doing this YouTube channel, which I never expected that I would ever do. And I've seen that it has done a lot of good. Like if I'm to believe all the comments and emails that I've received, if everyone's being truthful, then it's definitely had an impact. And all I know is that for right now, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. I don't know what's on it. I don't know how Christian Homestead ends. I don't know what's on the other side. I have no retirement. I don't know. I do not know. But all I do know is that we're doing the right thing right now. And I have somebody that I can trust that does know uh, what the next step is. Because if I try to plan all this out when I was in high school, which I did try to do, in high school, I was like, oh, maybe I'm going to be a teacher. Like for a long time, I wanted to be a teacher. Or if I had like the type of graphic design that I do, the industry called print on demand, it didn't exist in high school, and YouTube didn't exist in high school. But the Lord knew that these things were going to exist. So there's no way that I could have planned it and felt secure about everything. But the Lord knew. He took us through this process, and it's all worked out in such a perfect way to where I'm now at where I'm at. So I've never, with the exception of high school, I've never really had any big doubts, uh, like about the gospel, about the church history, or anything like that. Um, every step, every like little episode that I've mentioned has always had difficulties and sacrifice. And I feel like there are people, again, I'm not trying to be holier than thou, but I know that there are people that probably wouldn't make some of those sacrifices. And so I think there's people right now that are forfeiting blessings because they're not willing to make the sacrifice. They're not willing to go through the hard time. They can't step out of the comfort zone. Maybe there's like social consequences. It's like, oh, but now I'm not going to be able to keep up with the Joneses if I do this. Like I wanted a, prestigious career, but now I'm doing this. So there's all sorts of things that can prevent people from, I think, fulfilling their destiny by giving into fear and uncertainty and listening too much to the natural man.
Yeah.
So
You know, you
I
bring up
advise, oh, go
you
ahead.
you bring up retirement, and that's something that it's been the weirdest thing following that prompting just in my own life. I remember I didn't finish my bachelor's until after I had my kids and they were old enough to go to school. So I didn't start teaching until they were in school. And but I remember this distinct thought: you're not doing this for retirement. Now, this is two, I come from both parents who taught years and years and years in education, right? And you do it for 30 years, and that's just what you do. And so to have that thought of you're not doing this for retirement, what a weird, weird thought. So here we are, I'm 52 years old, and I'm like, I don't have a retirement. And so I'm left with that natural man in the background of what am I going to do? But yet the natural man in the foreground, I guess, but the spirit in the back always confirming that it's okay. We trust in a God who knows what's going to happen, how it's going to play out. And our job is just to learn to just trust that and feel, for me, it's learning to feel more comfortable in that unknown. Is the unknown for you? Have you learned to feel more comfortable in that space?
Yeah, because like I guess basically I've felt more and more desensitized to it. Like it's still there, but it's not, I don't feel as sensitive to it because of the Lord's track record in my life. It far outweighs uh the concerns. Like they're still there. Like they're still there. The natural man doesn't go away. It's still scared, but I know better.
You
I
know,
know
I was
better.
listening to President Nelson's Overcoming the World and speaking of these fears and whatnot, but he just says over time, it's not going to happen just, overnight or in a year, maybe, it might not even happen in this life, but you will feel the peace. You will feel more confident with this as we continue. And I love you're desensitized. It's just like, it's there. I recognize it, but this is where I'm going to anchor. This is where I'm going to be to
So,
have my faith.
Jared, what advice would you give to somebody who is in the middle of that fear? I don't care if they're just out of high school and going and deciding if they're going the college route or what they're going to do, or somebody who is, in their 20s and 30s and 40s. What advice would you give to them when they are trying to eliminate that fear and be able to trust? I love what you said about this background piece that you have. How do you help somebody to attain that?
The only way that I know how to do it is just to prove the Lord, and not prove the Lord as in like give me a sign and then I'll believe. Prove him as in you receive a prompting and then act on it. And then you're conducting a test. You're conducting an experiment. In science, you come up with a hypothesis and then you set up an experiment, you observe things, and then you write it down, you write a paper, have it peer reviewed. That's how you test reality as far as like natural science, and in a secular way. But with the church, like this is a spiritual thing. It's the same thing. You have the hypothesis, like, okay, I do have faith. I do think that this is coming from the Lord. He's inspiring me to do something. Now I have to go test it. And then you go test it and observe it. And it may not be like a quick thing. The army wasn't a quick thing. I thought the army was going to be the end. I was like, okay, I'll do the army for 20 years and then I'll retire. That's one of the great things about joining the military is that you can retire after 20 years. So I think patience and then testing out commandments, testing out promptings, and then remembering, if that takes you writing it down in a journal or constantly talking about it with the ones that you love and trust, family members, if you're married, talk about it, have these conversations with your spouse and remember together the journey that you've been through. Then when you can like step back and see that big picture, then you have a lot of data and you can see that there's a clear trend, a perfect trend, where if you do it, it works out. Maybe not the way that you think. And I think a lot of times like even better than what you think. Um, So that's the only way that I know how to do it, is you test it and remember it and be patient. And try and exercise and try to have your spirit be in control of your natural man, because again, fear mostly comes through the natural man. The natural man is a great vehicle for Satan to try and manipulate you. He who knows everything that he's privy to, but I have several quotes from general authorities talking about the fact that Satan knows who you are. He doesn't have like the same veil, I don't believe. Like, he does recognize you from the premortal life. He may know the training that you've been through for your specific mission in life. And so he may have some sense as to the key players and what they're supposed to do. And if he can tap into your body's natural fear, then that's why we have to control it, because we want to use it to our own ends, not let Satan manipulate it. So that would be my advice. Um, I would not. I'd be careful listening to others. Uh, we should counsel with other people. Sometimes the Lord speaks through other people, but you have to be careful, because when it comes to personal revelation, it's intended for you, and there's other people that have other plans for you. Unfortunately, it can be family members. It could be friends, where it's like they have some other interest and it conflicts with whatever your personal revelation is. So you have to be careful what you share with them. You have to be careful with how much influence they have over you. That's another way that Satan can get to you, especially if it's somebody that's not very spiritual, somebody that is more of a natural man person. Then Satan can work through other people to try and discourage you. So you just have to be in tune with reality. And I think the most real thing is what you feel on the inside, subjectively, from the spirit.
That's great. And I just love how you're just like, I feel this way. I'm just going to go with it. I'm going to test it. We're just going to see. You just kind of have this open-ended, who knows how it's going to turn out. And that's faith. And that's relying on our Heavenly Father and Jesus Christ and just trusting that whole process. So
Yeah.
that's beautiful. Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing and just sharing your heart and your story. And so we have a final question for you that we ask all of our guests. And you probably already answered this, but just kind of just sum all this up for us. Why do you choose to stay in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints?
Oh yeah, it's because I know. Like, I guess I can't go as far as to say that I know, but I know. I know. Like, there's no way that you can live a life like this and then, step away from the church and feel good about it. There's just too much. There's too much. Even like doing YouTube and having my friends in YouTube, um, there's just so many times where we have like things that coincide with each other. We talk about certain things that we couldn't have known otherwise, and we're like, one person will make a video, I'll make another separate video, and it'll be the same topic, but it won't be something that's like news. So it's not like, oh, she saw that news story and I saw this news story, that's why we're making the same video. No, there'll be other times where we just like talk about the same book, or we talk about some concept and it coincides. Like, there's just like so much. If you just pay attention and you see the Lord's hand, then you just and then once uh if you walk away from it, then you're basically just in open rebellion at that point. If you've collected all this data, I don't mean for it to sound cold and calculated, but after you've collected all this like spiritual data and then you walk away from it, then it could be that you have that other side where it's like, well, if I wasn't a member of the church, or if I could twist things in my mind this way, then I can justify this bad behavior or this thing that goes against the commandments. Like, there's that too. So I think you have to like stop and wonder, or stop and ask yourself, what are your motivations? Why are you wanting to step away from the church? But I can't do it unless I enter into open rebellion.
I love that you have gotten to that point where you know that, and how many people are in that place where they're questioning
was that really evidence? But I feel like it comes full circle. And eventually they come back because they remember, and that they have that beautiful experience where they say, I have seen this before. I do know that this is true. And I think it's beautiful. Jared, thank you so much. Thank you for sharing your testimony and your insight. And I love, you are all about witnesses. And I love that you were able to put your finger on all the evidence, all of the witnesses, the way that God has shown up for you, the way that he keeps whispering to you with that underlying peace. It was beautiful. Thank you for being on the show today.
Thank you. No problem. It's great to be here.
And thank you to our listeners who have spent the time with us today to listen to Jared's story, his testimony, his faith, and belief. And if you have a story that you would like to share with us of how you're staying anchored in the Church of Jesus Christ, in your covenants, anything that you would like to share with the world and just proclaim who he is in your life, we would love for you to reach out to us at anchoredinChristpodcast@gmail.com, or we have a website that you can chat with us and reach out to us that way at anchoredpodcast.net. We sure would love to hear your story. Until next time, thank you.